Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time we'll be doing a couple questions mainly around the Bad Batch series finale, which means be warned there will be spoilers ahead if you have not seen it. And so with that said, let's kick it off with this question from Donald, who asked, "Hey Thor, now that the Bad Batch is over, what do you think the next animated series will be? And to add to that question, if it were up to you, what would you pitch?" And I think the next show absolutely will be something to do with or include Asajj Ventress, or what was really the point of bringing her back for a one-off episode that, in the grand scheme of things, didn't really do or mean or accomplish virtually anything for the show itself. I mean, it's not like, at least yet, anything has come of Omega being tested to see if she is force sensitive and finding out apparently she isn't. You can basically even remove that episode or have skipped watching it and you really missed nothing. And look, I like Ventress. A part of me, sure, I enjoyed seeing the character again just because I like the character. But another part of me, the part that wins out in this case, thinks she was a great character that had a fantastic story arc in the Clone Wars, that was capped off beautifully by the book Dark Disciple, and didn't need to be brought back. Furthermore, I think Star Wars really needs to focus on some brand new characters, which is what it started to do in a show like The Mandalorian, where pretty much every character in Season 1 was new and it was pretty much a brand new concept they were exploring. But look what that then became in Season 2, where we were bringing in characters like Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, Luke Skywalker, some really heavy-hitting legacy characters in Season 2. And then Season 3 just became the Bo-Katan show, for better or worse, and just kind of branched off in all sorts of different directions and was something completely different. And so my guess for the next animated show is something to do with Asajj Ventress. Even her voice actress said of her return in The Bad Batch that it was basically just the beginning, and there were bigger plans for the character down the road. And I can still see them doing some sort of show about the path, what happens to Force users in the Age of the Empire, where her and maybe Quinlan Vos, who she falls in love with during Dark Disciple, and obviously, or hopefully, some new characters as well, that they're helping Force-sensitive kids escape from the Empire. Now, I'm not saying that's what I would necessarily want to see or what I would do, nor am I saying I completely hate the idea either. I think it's fine. It's just what I could see them doing, or why else bring back Ventress? Why undo what I felt like, and I think other people felt like, was a pretty solid ending for the character in Dark Disciple. Granted, it's a book not a lot of people read. Though another interesting idea that the Bad Batch finale possibly sets up is some sort of rogue squadron show with Omega in it. Maybe not the main character, but certainly on or in Rogue Squadron. I mean, that sounds potentially interesting, with an issue being, and it's the same issue I would have with a show about the path really, which is that it's going to be set in the same old time period. It's still set right around or during the original trilogy. As for what show I would do or what show I would pitch if it were up to me, well, that's hard because there is a part of me that would really love to see a Luke's Jedi Academy series, even knowing how it'll all turn out in the end thanks to the sequels. And no, I'm not saying I'd want the series to be used to justify those films or the downfall of Luke or anything like that. I just think it is a really interesting idea, one I very much enjoyed in the EU, and would make a perfect animated series, one that could be a bit more anthology style in nature like the Clone Wars was. Sometimes following Luke, who is, yes, a very established character, and sometimes following some of his students who could be the brand new characters we're looking for, and sometimes following other characters in the galaxy that would be somehow connected to the Jedi Order, or that the Jedi Order would have to go and deal with. In fact, after how Season 2 of The Mandalorian ended, I thought that is exactly what we would be getting in the near future. It seemed like a no-brainer to create a series, an animated series with those two characters, with Luke and Grogu, in order to hopefully draw even more people, some of the new Grogu fans, to Star Wars animation. But of course Grogu, made the choice to go back to Din Djarin, and that did not happen. Alright, next up here we have two comments or questions that I'm kind of going to answer all at once, and the first one here comes to us from Doghead Man, who said, "Hey Thor, where's the death? Where's the sacrifice? It makes me feel that there was a narrative pivot at some point that derailed the plan of one or more of the batch dying. And what about the scenes where someone was putting on a helmet without showing their face? I've got to believe that was a somehow tech returned scene that got scrapped. It was by no means a bad conclusion, but it did leave me wanting something a little deeper than what we got. And what about Cody? Well, that's all I've got." There's also then this one from Violator, who said, Hey Thor, I thought it was fun, but what was it all for? That's my main question. Ultimately, when you strip it back, the third season was really the Let's Save Omega show. Behind it all, that's all the story was. On the way, we learned that Omega has blood which can transfer the Force, which they never made anything out of anyway, and it was never really explained why this makes sense. Oh, they got a pet too. Ventress showed up and then went, not really having done anything really. I never really figured out why that was anything I should be bothered about. Is that the stakes? We never learned anything really. Project Necromancer remained a mystery and we learned nothing about it, and from what we did learn, nothing made a lot of sense. All the story came down to was Omega escaping and getting saved and then getting caught and then escaping and getting saved again. What was her character arc? She hadn't really changed as a character. She's basically the same person 3 seasons later, albeit a bit mature and taller. The only person who got an arc was Crosshair. The whole series felt like it never had a reason to exist. It was a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. I don't know, I just wish we'd have a conversation about this. Okay, so I do absolutely agree with many of the points brought up in both of these comments here. And I think the main idea with the series, or what it ultimately turned into, even if it maybe wasn't exactly the plan going into it, was a show about how these soldiers who had literally been created for war, how they could find a new or completely different purpose beyond that. And that purpose was to protect and give a better life to Omega, and in the process they found a better life for themselves. Hence why we got the, as I called it in my review, the happily ever after ending, and none of them died in the finale. Though, like I was kind of just saying, I don't know that that was the plan going into the series. I think, or get the impression from Season 2 in particular, that they did want to ramp it up a bit as it went along to turn it into something bigger. They did want to tackle more big picture clone stuff with the Chuchi Senate episodes and some of the other episodes with Hauser and so on. I think we were going to get a wider view of what happens to the clones. They even brought in Cody in Season 2, and that turned out to go absolutely nowhere, despite many thinking he might be Clone X or something, which I was glad he wasn't. I was glad Clone X was no one, or the Clone Xers were no ones, and I was certainly glad it wasn't Tech. But anyway, yeah, I do think the series was originally going to be longer, more seasons than 3, and they were going to build to a clone rebellion that ultimately would fail and would see the clones that survived, even those that didn't partake in the rebellion, see them punished and deemed as defective and disregarded. I think the original idea was to go bigger, to give us more stakes than maybe the finale felt like it had with the whole let's go save Omega. It was, I think, going to get bigger as it went on, and to have a much darker and very kind of sad ending overall with seeing what happens to the clones. But ultimately, I think they decided to, funny enough here, I think they decided to go the opposite route than something like The Mandalorian Season 3 did. I mean, many people, myself included, as I was just talking about moments ago, I think Mando Season 3 was kind of a mess that just missed the mark completely, and honestly, it felt like it became a different show. Not just because Bo-Katan kind of took over, but because it completely dropped that original style and idea from Season 1 and really went big picture with pretty much everything. But I think the Bad Batch decided to stick with the team that the show was, at the core, all about, and that it was named after. I think it decided to just wrap up their story instead of trying to wrap up 10 other things as well, all of which, in the grand scheme of things, were bigger and more important than their story, if you will. I really don't think they wanted the Batch to get lost in their own show, the same way that Mando got lost in his. Not that they created Bad Batch Season 3 in response to Mando Season 3, just that they realized we had kind of lost sight of the core team, or easily could, if things got too big, and that we wouldn't give a very satisfying ending to the team, and they decided not to do that. And so, yes, I do agree that Season 3 of the Bad Batch kind of became the Let's Save Omega show. But it also became the Let's Save Crosshair show, and let's show that, yeah, people can actually find peace and purpose beyond war in Star Wars. Which, honestly, you can love or hate the fact that that's what it became in the end. That the big picture stuff was kind of dropped. And a part of me, as I said in my review, I wanted something that hit a little harder, or was a gut punch, if you will, or just felt different than what we got. Part of me wanted something that was a little more bittersweet and showed how there is a price to be paid in war. However, you could argue that they, the Bad Batch, especially Crosshair, had already paid that price, and now it was about finding how you cope with the price you have paid. And I think the problem with that ending, though problem is the wrong word, is that, again, it felt like other things or more things were being set up. It felt like there was this grander story it wanted to tell, or was telling at one point, again, mainly in Season 2, and then at the end of Season 3 here, it decided, nah, we're not going to bother with that stuff, we're not going to wrap that all up, we're going to do this instead, we're going to just focus on this team. And don't get me wrong, what they did was really good. I think the third season of The Bad Batch is the best season of The Bad Batch, and the ending has a beauty to it that works perfectly for what I think they wanted to convey or how they wanted to end it. It just didn't feel like, originally, what the show was going for or how it would ultimately end. I think many of us were kind of braced for something else because the show sent signals to brace for something else and something a bit darker. And when we didn't get that, when it ended, again, happily, I had more of this, oh, that was a really nice ending. I feel good about this. I felt that rather than just being relieved they had all survived like I think I was supposed to feel. I think I was just supposed to be happy they all survived. Instead, I was surprised they all survived. Well, I think that's all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me if you think there were changes made along the way, or just for the finale maybe, or if you think this was the plan all along for the series. You can also ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. But whatever you choose to do, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.